welcome Consumer Law 101 consumer individual viewers. We are here. We made it to the 10th and final video of our advanced video series. And our 10th and final is called The Secrets of the Junk Debt Buying Industry. That's the LVNVs, the MCMs, the PRAs of the world. Last video, we talked about secrets of debt collection. Now we're talking about secrets of junk debt buying. As always, I'm your instructor, attorney Aaron Swift, Swift Law North's CEO and managing partner. Our agenda, we're going to be talking about secrets about the underlying money, much like we did in last video, but this will be money about the underlying junk debt buying industry. We're going to talk about secret junk debt buying collection and litigation strategies. And lastly, secrets consumers can use to fight back as best practices. All right, so let's talk about secrets of the underlying money. So per Investopedia, debt buyers made over $15 billion last year. $15 billion. So that means they bought enough debt and old debt, or what may be considered bad or uncollectible debt. And then by collection efforts, turned that around and made a revenue of $15 billion in last year alone. And that's not included in the revenue that were made by debt collectors. This is separate from that. So you can think about, just the sheer volume and sheer amount of people and the money that's being collected here is just astronomical. Then, one of the secrets to know about the money is debt buyers sometimes pay as low as 7 cents on the dollar for certain debts, sometimes even lower. I've seen as low as 3, and I've heard stories about as low as 1 cent on the dollar, or even less, fractional cents for very, very old or very tricky debts. So think about that math. So in 2016, LVNV's parent company reported total liquid assets, that's liquid cash on hand, of $1 billion. So, if they're paying 7 cents on the dollar, just to do the math here, so you buy a debt that's $700 and you pay $7 for it. You buy a debt that's $7,000 allegedly and you pay $700 for it. So you can be a really profitable company and seem like 12 guys if you buy something for 7 cents or 7% worth and then collect 50% on it. You sell yourself as a super sweet friend. And, that's going to be one of these collection strategies we talk about. So they strive to collect 100% of the debt. And I say 100% of the debt because by this point, if it's with a junk debt buyer, it's been sold. It's been sold at least once, if not multiple times. And debts get trickier to prove. The contract documents get older and older, and documents change hands, banks change hands. Things get tricky with these debts when they're sold time and time again. So that gives a lot of leverage to consumers, so they will virtually always settle. And remember, if they only paid 7% of the alleged debt amount and they settle for anything over 14%, they've doubled their money, which is wildly profitable, but a lot of times they're getting much more than 14%. As a litigation strategy, junk debt buyers end up suing consumers on about 20 to 25% of all their accounts. That number is massive. We're talking tens and tens of thousands of lawsuits, hundreds of thousands of lawsuits across the country a year against consumers. But that's only a quarter of their debts. That means they're either not collecting and not suing, or they're successfully settling with the vast majority, almost 3/4, if not 80% of their consumers. So again, that's just a huge number. And then, one of the secrets of this industry is that consumers default on an estimated 88 to 95% of junk debt buyer collection lawsuits. And so, there's a law professor who wrote some great articles about this industry, and she calls it the default game or the default trap. Consumers get scared, they don't know what to do. Secret, watch and buy the next pro video series. We have 3 videos on some introductory elements of what to do in junk debt buyer or collection lawsuits in general. But for the most part, consumers don't show up over 90% of the time. And then they just win by default. And then they can garnish wages, intercept tax returns, and so on and so forth. These debt buyers are smart too. They act as debt collectors in a lot of ways. They target the same times, the 15th of the month, end of the month, first of the month, tax time. again, they're not your friends. These companies play the swell guy routine very well. And again, if you just think about the math, they're able to do that because if they pay such a low percentage of the alleged debt amount and then they settle for a low amount, even as low as 50%, they're still making a lot of money. And sometimes, they're not settling for 50%. They're getting default judgments and collecting 100%, or they're getting consumers scared and settlements that are on the higher side. But just don't act or don't fall for the act like these guys are your friends. They're collecting from you. They're trying to collect the most amount they can. They, again, are incentivized the same types of ways to collect the most money, to save the most money in terms of their collection costs. The companies also like to do what are called, re-aged or zombie debts. That is, a debt can only be sued on for certain long, period of time and can only be credit reported for certain periods of time. And if that's the case, these companies, they might get the debt later in those cycles and they try to re-age it. So let's say the statute of limitations is 5 years. These companies get it at year 4. Now they want to report the open date as that new date when they got the debt. So they think they have another 5 years to sue or even another 7 years from then to credit report. And that's not how it works. Those actions would be illegal. And then another thing that these companies are risking because they're older debts, right? They've been sued, uh, sold at least once or transferred at least once. That's another terminology that's pretty interchangeable in the credit reporting world is a debt can either be transferred or sold. It's pretty interchangeable nomenclature, but these debts, because they get older and older, these companies risk suing past the statute of limitations, which is a problem. So how can consumers fight back? Well, let's apply the basic principles that we've just learned. If we know that these junk debt buyers qualify as debt collectors, which you should know by now from our various videos, you know that you're going to look into the terms and standards under that law and you're going to look for common violations. Are these companies asking for money that they're not entitled to? Are they calling after certain hours? Are they credit reporting incorrect information? Um, these debt buyers, the secrets that they use, they want to collect the most money, but they'll take lower settlements. Well, they're not exactly Johnny in the spot then on the back end. Sometimes they'll take a settlement and now they should be owed $0, but they're still credit reporting a balance. And that's a problem. So if that's the case, you'd want to dispute. You want to use our best videos, our pro videos that come up next. They have the most powerful tools. They're going to have the best logic behind them, the best legal power behind them, ultimately because they're written by lawyers. Again, they're educational. They're not applicable to any one specific scenario, but they're broad enough to apply to every state because these are the same laws applicable to every state. So if you have any old debts in your credit reports that were bought by junk debt buyers, if you think they're too old to be reported or they violated, a statute, reach out. Again, there are ways that we can use both the FDCPA and the FCRA against these guys to hopefully put some money in your pocket, make the debt go away, make the trade lines go away, and then ultimately invest for me. And also a great thing for you is that have them pay my fees and costs, the attorney's fees and costs ultimately when you prevail. So as I said, congratulations, you made it to the end of our advanced video series. Um, Great work. You're 2/3 of the way through. If you're going to hopefully continue on to our pro video series, if you haven't already bought that series, just know that there's much more valuable information there. It gets deeper. And then most importantly, it has our template letters that can be applicable because of these federal laws in just about every state. Of course, have to be tailored accordingly. But more information, go to our website, consumerlaw101.com. That's where you'd find those videos, a lot of other content, including videos for businesses and professionals and other templates, other statutes covered there. And if you think you have an issue with a junk debt buyer, they've already violated the law in some way, reach out to us at swiftlawnorth.com. Thank you.